As we read the scriptures and we apply them properly, we'll see that there's a sequence of time that God does things. That brings up the subject of dispensationalism. I thank God that in my young Christian life, I was brought in contact with some reliable and faithful ministers who taught me dispensational teaching, how to properly handle the Bible. Anybody who mocks that is mocking themselves to their own destruction.
Yes.
Because God knows, just like there were different feast days for different time periods, so there are different ages in which God does things differently. And we need to sort those ages out so we won't get confused and mixed up in our application of truth. Anybody who reads the Bible and down through the ages, even of so-called church history, men always divided the Bible into sections,
Right.
4 basic ages, and the distinguishment between Israel and the law observance and the church and the grace observance. John, in his gospel, opens up with striking the keynote. The law came by Moses, but grace and truth by Jesus Christ. Well, then when we get into the Apostle Paul, we get the administration. We get the stewardship of the grace of God.
Yeah.
And under Moses, you got the stewardship under the law age. There's 2 different ages. You don't mix them up. Don't confuse them. And that word dispensation shouldn't be confusing at all. It means to cut a straight course. Probably Paul had in mind his own trade. By occupation, we know he was a tent maker. To make tents, you've got to cut your fabric or skin into straight lines. Why? Because you're going to sew them together. And if you cut crooked, you try to sew those pieces together, and you got a tent that looks like a wrinkled old, my old wrinkled face. So you got to cut straight. Yeah. When you cut straight, you rightly divide. And the early King James translators simply made that translation, to rightly divide the word of truth. I think it's appropriate to do that.
You know, Paul used the word dispensation.
Absolutely.
4 times, in fact,
Yes.
in the New Testament. And he said, a dispensation of the gospel is committed unto me, in the King James Version. What did he mean by that? He meant that it was his job, given to him by God, to explain the ages and how they fit together to produce the end result. In other words, God's plan is rather complex, and it takes place in stages.
That's correct.